Hello and welcome to Tai'Shar Manethrin, Wheel of Time podcast. I'm Sam.
I'm Will.
Happy Halloween, or I guess happy November 1st or 2nd or 3rd, depending on when we get this out. We're recording it on Halloween, so happy Halloween. So we are here to react to the full-length cinematic trailer we got, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool to get that.
Before we get into kind of doing a breakdown, just overall impressions. What were yours?
It really gives me a better feeling about the show in general. I think that was something you had mentioned, Will, and I completely agree. I feel the kind of Lord of the Rings vibes more so than the Game of Thrones inspiration, and I like that. I mean, obviously the source material is not Lord of the Rings, but you can feel that there's a similar kind of approach to cinematography, to costume design. Different from Game of Thrones, and I think it's a nice feel.
No, I completely agree. I think you get a better sense for the what we've talked about, what I've heard other people talk about, the fact that this is Wheel of Time, that is a bridge kind of between the fantasy of the Tolkien Lewis era and the more modern fantasy that tends towards a little more grimdark, where there is some grittiness, some dark moments in there, but it's not grimdark. It's more of a good split between the more idealistic kind of fantasy that you had in the Tolkien era, and I think a more modern, maybe a little bit more grounded kind of view of fantasy. So that's that was my impression too, just that you get a little better feel overall for the mood and tone of the series than you did in the teaser.
Yeah, lots of details in here that confirm things we speculated about, that like fill in some of the gaps, fill in some of the speculation with truth. And then you had sent over a kind of walkthrough video that Rafe did, like Rafe narrating the trailer, which was when you sent it, I was like, oh, IGN breaking down the trailer, like who cares? But then like, oh shoot, Rafe is doing this. Okay, this is pretty cool.
Right. He gave us some real good details. So
yeah, really, it gives you some background on his way of thinking about things and the way the show is approaching adapting the books, which is pretty cool.
Well, we'll dive into it. First off, I'll say we're not going to offer any spoilers that I don't think that Rafe didn't do in his breakdown.
Right, but yeah, he had some in his.
Yeah. And then we may get a little more spoilery at the end. So,
and to be fair, it's a trailer. It covers, it highlights the whole first season just about. So
so we're not going to be like doing any major plot point spoilage.
Yeah, it's not as gratuitous as a lot of the Netflix previews is like. I watched a Netflix preview like, well, I just watched the whole show.
Right.
So I don't really know why I'm going to continue to watch it.
Yeah, there certainly are times where, and it's funny, there was a period of time where it felt like trailers in general just had gotten to be the entire movie.
Super cut of the movie.
Yeah. And I feel like we kind of shifted away from that, like just in the last like 5 or 6 years.
I want to get back to the movie guy voice.
Oh yeah,
in a world where sandwiches rule. Yeah,
it's funny. Of course, I love honest trailers, but there's a degree to which like the joke is almost lost because no one does that hardly anymore.
I know. Yeah,
so
figment of the past.
Right. Let's take a look here. So it opens right away with a heavy Moraine focus. That's really this whole trailer.
Yep.
We get into, and this is just kind of interesting to me. It sounds like it's Swan saying, "Swear your oath, Moraine."
Right, and then the holding out the oath rod there.
Right. And so then she gives the 3 O's. Now, there are several things here that I take away. Is if we're to take this at face value, then this is a change that Swan is the Amerlin when Moraine swears her oaths. If that's indeed the case. Now, of course, trailers are often cut together, in ways that can make be deceitful, just to give.
But I take your point. That would be a departure from the books, which would be understandable to some extent, possibly.
Yeah, the only question is, how does that change Swan and Moraine's history without getting into more spoilery things than that.
Right.
One of the things that is clear is that we're getting at least a little bit of content that belongs in New Spring,
Right.
as we had speculated very early on, was probably going to be likely, and there's actually room for a little bit more of that later on.
Right. Yeah. I think Rafe even says, like, yeah, we're getting into both stuff that's not in the books at all and stuff that's not necessarily in just the first book. He even kind of highlights that in his
right.
Yeah.
One of the other things in this bit that I've heard people kind of get riled up about that I really think is a whole lot of nothing is the fact that they cut off the last oath before it is all the way out. And I guarantee you guys that the rest of it is in there.
Right.
I could not imagine them having the Aes Sedai swear to never use the power as a weapon, period.
Yeah, that wouldn't make sense, especially with literally when we see Moraine throwing fireballs at Shadow Spawn.
Right. So,
I'm not going to do harm. I'm just going to scare them.
Right. Exactly. So I think it's just fairly safe to say this is just a curtailed version of the full last oath that would include, and except in defense of myself or that of my warder, or against Shadow Spawn, or however it's worded.
Yeah, the in defense thing is always kind of funny. It was like I don't know. Do you feel threatened yet when there's like an army approaching? Like, can you attack? Do you feel like you're in danger?
Yeah, it's
not till then.
Something that I don't think is quite used to the comedic effect in the books that could be used in the show is that whole concept. Like, what if somebody is like really menacing at an Aes Sedai, and it's like, why don't you attack me or something? And they say,
come at me, bro.
Yeah, and then they just say, I don't feel threatened. Like basically saying,
well played.
Right.
Well played.
Exactly.
I would like that.
That would be a funny moment, as if like, can't you attack me? And it's like, I'm bound by the oaths to only.
You're gonna have to try harder than that.
Right. If I feel threatened, and I simply don't feel threatened, would be a really great, kind of sideways.
Yeah, you could see Moraine delivering that line.
Yes, something like that.
Pretty great.
So,
that was one thing I did notice. Moiraine, and I heard Rafe say Moiraine.
Yes. Yeah, that seems to be the way he says it.
Yeah, it's just him. I don't think I've heard that in the show, or at least in the trailer of the show. But I've heard him say it that way.
Yeah, in the scene, it sounds pretty clear that Lan says Lan, for one thing we mentioned, and and that he says Moraine. It just kind of flows the vowels out. It is a bit of a diphthong to some degree, but he kind of has a distinct OI sound when he says it. I don't.
Right.
I don't think.
Yeah, that's definitely doesn't matter. I just noticed it when he was. Something that had come up before.
It is funny. We do get to see the oath rod early on, which is something funny. I think I pointed out. This is not a spoiler kind of thing or whatever, but that arguably Robert Jordan didn't have the oath rod solidified as the object that they would use.
In the first book.
In the first, I think it was like even in the second book. There's a moment where Nynaeve, I think, says something about them standing in a ter'angreal or something like that when they take the oaths. And now I think I said then, headcanon, she just doesn't know, or she might not have known yet. And that's very plausible, but I think it's just as likely that he just hadn't made up his mind yet. And it's kind of cool to see it here. It's also kind of funny to me because at this point in the story, it hadn't appeared, partially because I think Jordan hadn't quite thought it up yet.
Yep.
So many cool things here. With the power,
Moraine channeling and Loghain,
right?
And so it's almost like she's there for the capture of Loghain, unless it's a supercut. I mean, which to be fair, we don't see Loghain getting captured in the books anyway.
Right.
But that would be it. Certainly, think it's probably fair to say that Moraine is not there.
Right.
Which makes sense that if we're making things kind of flow better or for a TV show, you're not going to that makes sense if the show, especially the show, is going to be centered around Moraine, that she would be there.
Right. And it may just be her visiting him wherever they're holding him, before they take him to the tower or something.
Maybe. I mean, she's channeling there.
Right.
I picture it more that she's like helping capture him or something.
No, I think you're probably more likely, but it's just, like you're saying, with the way it's all cut together,
there's no telling. Yeah.
After that, we have a warder, and one of the warders that we're not exactly sure who he belongs to, I think, where he's saying the Aes Sedai means servants of all in the old tongue. There, again, it's kind of continuing the Moraine centricness by showing the Hall of the Tower and Moraine, by the way, with the jewel on her head. Notice that. Fans that are purists will be a little happier seeing that. And then we get some text based on the best-selling books by Robert Jordan. I saw one person post, and I just thought it was interesting. Where they said, shouldn't it say by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson?
I think Sanderson would be totally okay with it not saying that. Like he never wanted, he never was counting on his work on the Wheel of Time to be what carried his career.
Right. And I that's exactly what I think most people said, is that Sanderson wouldn't want it to say that. I think
he did it out of a labor of love. He wanted to see this in the world.
Right. Exactly. I think
felt it was an honor.
Yeah. And I mean, I think really anyone who does this kind of work would probably, where it's like they're somebody they really looked up to, that he saw it as helping finish Jordan's work, not as authoring it himself, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. Because if that was the case, he would have probably done things differently, but he was very faithful to Jordan's notes. That was his goal, was to finish it the way Jordan wanted it. So
yeah. And also, of course, this section that we're in isn't based off of anything Brandon Sanderson had anything to do with. So
that's a good point too.
It would doubly not make sense. After that, we get some shots of Moraine and the tower, then
riding through the forest. And one thing that Rafe mentioned is that they tried to film things on location as much as possible. These aren't green screens, and it's as much for the actors to get a feel for the world that they're supposed to be inhabiting, as much as it is for realism of the show. Thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, so important, really. He says this shot that we see after Lan and Moraine are talking about going to the two rivers, this wide shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful panorama. He's saying, that is all real. There's nothing fake about that. And that's the kind of thing we like to hear, in this day and age of.
Yeah. And that's like a great comparison between the original Lord of the Rings movies and The Hobbit. Like there's that famous moment where Ian McKellen, it like tears up because he was like during The Hobbit, he was like on a green screen talking to a puppet, like trying to act. And he like breaks down as he's like, this is not why I became an actor, to be on a green screen compared to, I think there was a lot less of that in the original Lord of the Rings movies. And probably one of the key reasons why they're considered better.
Right. And there's just no doubt that being able to see what you're acting in and the people or creatures you're acting against, which we'll get into a little bit more here in a second.
Yep.
I think and there's just no doubt that it helps with the overall quality, not just the end product for us to see, but the acting, and I think really just the enjoyment of the actors, which plays into the quality of the product. The old blood runs deep in those mountains. Love a little talk about the Manetheren.
Right.
Over there.
The Tai'Sharedness.
Yes. Then we get an overhead shot of what looks to be Egwene, or is that Aine?
Oh, is it? Oh, I don't know. Maybe you're right. Yeah, I didn't look too close.
It looks like it may be the similar moment from when she comes up, but it could be any of them.
You're probably right. I think it's Egwene.
When she comes up in the other trailer, she's covered in different dyes, and here she doesn't seem to be. So I don't know.
Right.
Who knows? Maybe it was a cutting room floor thing, and we won't see it in the actual show.
Right. Yeah, it's funny how often that happens.
Right. I mean, quite often, really, you'll see stuff in trailers that it's like, oh, this was a cool shot that we didn't end up using. Throw it in the trailer for a half second.
Right.
Yeah. Then we have a shot of Nynaeve's face. Then Egwene, then the three boys,
Just
and
super cut of all the Ta'Veren.
right. And one of the things this comes up a little later in the trailer, but I'll go ahead and say it. Something that they seem to be doing that I think is interesting is
I was going to mention that too.
The instead of it just being the three boys,
all five could be any of y'all could be the chosen one. I like that.
I like that for a couple of reasons.
as long as like we don't get into the end of the season and like Egwene is the Dragon Reborn, right. Like another turning of the wheel. Indeed, Sanderson, you warned us.
Yeah. I think that would definitely upset fans.
Be a bit of a departure.
Yeah, and I mean, I have. By the way, I have no problem. I'm going to leave that in, even though some people would be like spoiler, and it's like, okay, we just told you that originally it was just the three boys, so that was already a bit of a the tiniest bit of spoiler. But here's the thing, I'm here for it because not only does it why not, girl power, they can girls can be dragons now too. And,
but just not in these books. Sorry, not in these books. That's just it's done, it's happened. This was the 90s, man. I want to tell you. If you have an objection to that, go write that book. I'll read it.
Yes, absolutely. But here's the main reason why I like it. It gives clear motivation why Egwene and Nynaeve are along for the ride, which is one of my bigger beefs.
It is a problem. Yeah, early on, Egwene's like, I'm gonna tag along too. And then Nynaeve just like follows them for reasons. Yeah, which I always thought it was just like she was just trying to bring them home.
I mean, that's ostensibly what it is, but like why she continues after it's clear that this is like a longer term thing when she clearly also.
I just figured that was because of Lan.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. Not just that.
Well, I mean, it could. I don't know. I mean,
at least partly, yeah.
But anyway, we'll see. Back to the trailer. We got this shot of a Dark Rider walking in, which is very intentionally evoking a Lord of the Rings vibe. Here,
Nazgul,
right? We do get a brief shot of
Shedar Lugus.
Yeah,
and then the braid tug, and the braid tug and toss, the hair toss is like a good the way Rafe described it. I don't know if we're going to see it again in the show, which may or may not be a bad thing, but it was a pretty good approach of like the braid tugging is such a meme, and you can see how it could just be sort of awkward, but it's done well here. It's sort of like and even to take it a step further in the books, it almost comes across as this like petulant sort of not necessarily great thing as far as when it comes to
maybe even slightly sexist.
That's the word I was dancing around, but that's really it. And so this is his approach. It's certainly more empowering feeling. You get the braid, which has to be in the show, but then just hair toss, sort of angry hair toss, pretty. More empowering. You probably hear my wiener dog in the background there. We have trick or treaters.
No worries. No, I agree with you. I think it would be good for there to be maybe this a handful of times, but I don't think it needs to be as big a thing that like purists will be like, oh no, we've got to have a whole ton of braid tugging. And it's like, I mean, that.
Why though?
You have it in the book. You have that character thing in the book. I think you just need a little bit. I think this is like
just a nod. Yeah,
the nod. I think it, but it also makes it kind of its own thing by adding that toss. So
absolutely.
Then we get the line. It's one of the five of you, as we've seen the image field 5, which, like we said, I think is an upgrade. We also see Rand with a bow, which is cool. I think Daniel Green said that he was a bit of a bow boy at the beginning.
Right? Yeah, it is good. It's good to have that highlighted. Yeah,
highlight. We get a line from Matt. Have you fully lost your mind? Which feels like a very Matt line. And R.I.P. Barney Harris, not literally, but
right.
All of these shots of like sweeping stuff and everything, it's so beautiful. I mean, then we get to what is
Tropics.
I'm sure the post-winter night. They're looking up at the surrounding mountains. near Emmons Field, and Egwene says, "What are those? What are those?" It's like a whole army of Trollocs. This is something Daniel Green said this. It's actually something I think really great about Wheel of Time that can kind of go overlooked. The Dark One didn't just send a couple of riders out to go kill the Chosen One.
A whole dang army.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's what you would expect a dark force, a sentient dark force with all of these weapons at his disposal to do. He's going to send almost everything he can just to wipe out.
He was copying Fellowship of the Ring, but with improvements.
Exactly. And so it's not just like a handful of, guys on horseback that could pretty easily be evaded if you just get off the road. Versus, it's like, no, you need to run for your life as far and as fast as you can go. And by the way, if you don't, then they're going to destroy everything in their path trying to get to you.
And eat you. They're going to eat you.
Yes. So
and the Tropics, it will be interesting to see more, but I really like that it's practical.
Yep.
And I think Rafe said something about like CG enhancements to make it an image you couldn't really do in real life, but mostly practical costumes.
Right. It looks real.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. Yeah.
My immediate first thought was either that's practical or it is excellent CG. And
it's the right mixture.
Right.
And I always think of with like the light touch CG, I always think of Forrest Gump, the ping pong ball. Like perfect amount of CG.
It's so interesting when you look at all the movies in the 90s that were using CG when it was still relatively rudimentary, and how oftentimes it's much more invisible than it is today. Because they had such kind of they knew their limits more, I think, in that time. And so it was like, all right.
It's either it's aged well or it's really, really, really not aged well from the 90s.
Yeah, that's true. There are some that are awful.
Like Jurassic Park compared to, even like in Jumanji, some of the actual CG they have is real bad.
Yeah,
compared to some practical effects, and then they have some CG, and it's like really obvious when it's CG.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing though to me, like how you have these huge budget movies and they can still end up with like really chintzy looking stuff sometimes.
It all comes down to like the skill of the animator nowadays, I think, and that's like the reason why the Marvel movies have gotten better over time, is they've like the people they employ who do that stuff have just gotten really good at it.
Right. Well, also, one of the things that's happened is that you have a lot more effects houses now, and so they get more and more specialized too. Like
sure, like this guy only does bicycles. I don't know.
Almost. Like I know, at least for a long time, there was one special effects house that all they did was Iron Man's heads up display. That's nice. That was like their job. And
that's pretty cool.
That's a pretty good day at the office, right?
It is, yeah.
Anyway, back to the trailer. We do have what appears to be Narg. Yeah. And
we didn't hear him talk, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. Who knows? We may that may be.
I hope so. Yeah. I don't know if they did cut that, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I wouldn't be surprised, but I would like it to happen.
I could see that being like pretty divisive among fans, because I think there's some people that think Narg is just this kind of weird outlier in the books that
it doesn't happen again.
Right.
Yep.
And
so there's like not another chance to talk to a Trolloc in the whole books. Like we don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't stop and chat.
But Narg's smart, so
right.
No, I'm more like you. I was like, I like it in there. It's kind of fun, And it's kind of a slightly humorous moment too. In the and also, it comes up later when Rand tells the story, and people are like, "Wait, you talked to a Trolloc?" It's kind of like there's kind of
you can see how they're gonna pull this off. Like they're gonna get the Moraine scene in Emmons Field, and also we're getting Rand scene at the house, but we may not get the Rand dragging Tam through back to town on the wagon.
Right. So,
maybe very fast. Like it's just one shot.
I'm just wondering if they're going to actually live in town.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
could see that. That'd be okay.
I know,
wouldn't really.
I know people might be upset.
You could still have sheep in town. I mean,
Right.
that's just all depends on the local ordinances.
Yeah.
I know in some cities you can have chickens in in an apartment.
Oh man, I can see Tam sitting there reading a book on urban farming, with all the different
Right.
ways you can do those kinds of things.
It's got window boxes.
Yeah, exactly. Right after this, which is so cool to me, is Faldara.
Yeah, yeah, and said it's like some sort of city in the Czech Republic that like is built on this like stone foundation, and
Right.
I'm presuming they've like CGified it a little bit to make it different, but pretty cool. That's an actual place in Czech.
Yeah, and then you can see Tarwin's Gap.
Like I always picture Tarwin's Gap being further away, but I like that it's right there. It's an epic kind of moment that will be really cool in the show.
It kind of turns Faldara into more of the clear, like the Watchers on the Wall kind of.
Yeah.
This is the easiest spot for the Trollocs to just come waltzing through.
I was thinking Helm's Deep, but yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. It is.
I
also,
got a lot of things on the mind. I don't know.
A lot of people are going to, I think, draw the comparison of the Blight with the North in Game of Thrones, just because there are a fair number of similarities, like that whole idea of there being some kind of force coming from the North, and that the people along the border, they know about it, they believe in it, they deal with it all the time.
To be fair, it's not like George R. R. Martin came up with this idea. I mean, it's based on Hadrian's Wall, the Celtic British Isles dealio.
Right. And of course, Eye of the World did come first. So,
right.
Even so,
always worth remembering that.
Yes. I think it's cool is in one of the next following shots, you have a silhouetted image of, it could be Agilmar. Yeah.
Probably Agilmar, I would figure. Yeah. Top knot is visible there.
Yeah. And that's just cool. You just.
It is. It is indeed.
Yeah. They're doing it, man. They're getting those bits. The next sequence is interesting.
It's an Aes Sedai being burned at the stake, I think.
Yeah. Something that is, I think, pretty clearly invented. And then we have who I think it is Iman Valda. Yeah. Sitting presumably the way that they have it set up, because you can see in the flexion of the goblet that he has.
Oh, yeah. Watching the Aes Sedai burn at the stake.
Right. Yeah.
Classy. Real classy.
As he is sitting there eating. And then shortly after that, you have him collecting
his trophy.
a serpent ring on his belt. So,
and it's confusing because we cut to Lan and Moraine, and Lan's wearing white. I'm like, wait, is Lan a white cloak? No.
Yeah. That was a confusing cut. But before we get into that, I just want to say, I agree. Daniel Green was saying, they're going to have to do some splaining about how the white cloaks are so much more effective in
sure.
Catching.
I mean, it makes it. I like it.
Oh yeah,
because as we've talked about ad nauseum, all of the white cloak sequences just feel like a waste of time.
Right.
And so it's like, what are we wasting time with these useless dummies?
Yeah. They just feel like an annoyance.
So make them more menacing. I'm all about them actually being, Aes Sedai hunters who are successful sometimes.
Right. Yeah. I love this image of, him having a bunch of great serpent rings. And I know from the books, we are kind of just supposed to hate Iman Valda. He's just one of the, there are a handful of white cloaks that you can feel a little less frustrated with, but he is not him. He's awful. And so right from the get-go, having him be this really awful person and showing up earlier and everything, I'm like, yeah, I think that could work.
Sure.
And it also gives a little bit more texture into the complexity of this world, that, you have these different forms of opposition other than just Dark One versus our heroes. everything. So yes, moving on to the next sequence you mentioned.
And I was going to say I would be okay with you just make it Valda and maybe Pedro Nile at some point, but we don't. Yeah, just get rid of some of that nonsense.
Right. Yeah,
I wouldn't mind that.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. I saw somebody saying like they could even collapse Jacob Carden into Iman Valda, like make him the same.
Yes. 100%. I think I did that in my head already.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see them doing that as well. So we'll see. I mean, if they make them good characters, then I wouldn't mind them being in there. But it's like you're saying, they're in the books, they're often just kind of an annoyance rather than a well kind of thought out foil. Next is this sequence of Lan and Moraine and looks like maybe some other Aes Sedai around, all wearing white. And Lan is extremely distraught. Moraine is also distraught. She's crying. Doesn't look quite as distraught as Lan. So Rafe explains kind of
the relationship between Aes Sedai and their order.
Yeah, displaying the bond. So perhaps one or the other of them is dealing with a major loss and all that entails, and it's the other is feeling it, feeling that through the bond. And now Daniel Green kind of talked about a little bit. I think he cut some of it out after he listened to Rafe's explanation, but he's referred to a little bit how this does seem pretty uncharacteristic of Lan to show this amount of emotion, regardless of what is happening. That his a big part of his character is that he is carved of stone, that he just doesn't show that kind of emotion. And so it feels like kind of a departure to have him get this emotional. Yeah. And I can kind of agree with that, actually. They're going to have to really justify this is all. I'm not totally against it, but they're going to have to earn this moment for me as a fan of Lan from the books to be like, okay, yeah, that worked. Because I'm a little suspicious of it at this moment, or sus, as the kids say. One of the things that is kind of interesting is this phrase that comes next when Rand says, "We've lost too many people. I can't lose you too." This makes me wonder if we're going to have a few characters that survive in the book die earlier on.
I mean, that's one of those things that always kind of is. I don't know that I don't like it, but it's so noticeable, especially after reading something like Game of Thrones, like A Song of Ice and Fire, the fact that characters don't die very often. And if they do, it's very much a throwaway character. Right. It just doesn't happen. So yeah, I would be not surprised at all if that happens. Some character that is not super important, but survives in the books, just bites it earlier. Yeah, that's a good call. I'm not really making exactly an speculation at this point, because for one thing, I don't want to open up that can of worms right now to us to go down the rabbit hole. Because we could talk for forever if we got into some of the ripple effects of some of these characters. I'll be curious to see. And if it happens, in the first few episodes when we do our discussion on that, you might hear me say, okay, I didn't say it, but that was someone I thought might die early. And then, we can talk about the ramifications at that point. So I thought it was interesting in Rafe's overview that this shot of the overtop with the white cloaks surrounding Perrin and Egwene, that he straight up says that is Aram over. Right. Yeah. He says like, oh yeah, it's an extra we left in the shot. Whoops. Oh no, it's Aram. I won't tell you why he's there. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Because my first impression is, oh, that guy's dead. I mean, right. And I did think that that looks like a Tinker cloak, with all the colors, but when he says, well, it's Aram, are they going to kill him off sooner? or I wouldn't hate that. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody would, but he does have a bit of an interesting arc. It's just interesting that he just went ahead and said, yeah, that's Aram there, right there, and there's an explanation for why. I'm assuming that he's okay, that he's just injured, and that this will lead on to the things we see him do later on, that this will kind of inspire some of the rest of his story. This is my guess. But the fun thing about this trailer is that there's lots of little bits throughout. You get a little bit more Trolloc. Then you wind up
at the Waygate. Now, the Waygate image, I don't know if you noticed this, Sam, but it's technically the first glimpse, it's only his back, of Loyal.
Oh,
just beyond who I think maybe Egwene on the left there. I'm not sure if it's Egwene or Nynaeve.
Yeah.
We see the back of what would have to be Loyal at this point. So anyway, just a very minor thing. It goes by quickly. You don't see anything but the back of his head. No, and you don't even see any quivering, tufted ears. So it doesn't really give us any information other than that's almost definitely 99.9% that is Loyal.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Things get more and more intense. We see, once again, more Trollocs. We see Moraine throwing fireballs. I've heard some people say they were a little disappointed with the way this looked, with the CG.
That's something we had talked about before, the, CG quality.
I thought it was good. I mean, I don't know. Maybe my expectations are a little lower.
Yeah, haters gonna hate.
But then we follow that up with Logain.
And Rafe confirmed, you had mentioned in the teaser, that the black swirling around him is the taint.
Right.
Which good eye.
Rafe was very careful to say he didn't call it the taint. Did you catch that?
What did he say?
He called it the corruption. And so...
What's the difference?
Only because people aren't going to be able to call it the taint, the Dark One's taint. I mean, I'm going to miss the jokes about it, frankly. And I
think I'll be a little disappointed if they never say those words.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like, jokes aside, it just is like a core.
Yeah, it's a major thing, but corruption doesn't roll off the tongue quite as
no, it does not
quite the same way. But I do think it's interesting that they are visually representing it with that black oily, as they keep saying, and that it kind of goes over the weave after the fact. So that's cool.
Really, the next big thing is, I don't know, do we say Aiel? Can I say Aiel?
Oh, yes. Okay, so we'll say it.
Yeah, we should. I mean,
okay. So I'm just going to say we're gonna get firmly into spoiler territory here.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because this may be my favorite moment in this trailer, and I want to talk fully about it. So
absolutely,
total spoilers for New Spring and everything else. So this is almost definitely the Aiel War.
It's a flashback
and
blood snow, and
it's so cool to see just even a half second of an Aielman just trucking
spears, spears on his back.
Yeah, and the death machine that that these guys are running with that purpose,
right?
And then pulling down this heavily armored warrior by the cape. And actually, Daniel Green, I liked his hypothesis. Like, what if that is actually Tam? Like,
that'd be cool.
Yeah, that like an Aielman, it like runs across and just like slams Tam down, and that they like duel. And because I mean that would make sense. That would be if it's from a perspective,
makes sense for it to be Tam, sure.
Right? But yeah, this course would be flashing back to most likely
Rand's birth.
Right. It's just cool to see, even just from the back, even garbs probably slightly differently than they normally would because they're in white instead of brown. The Aiel represented even in a short sequence. That is something that I was really psyched. I was like, yes! Because I think most people who really love Wheel of Time really love the Aiel. It's
right. Yeah, I can't wait to see how they're received by the general public.
Right.
Like such a cool.
Yeah. I always describe them as Celtic Arabian ninjas.
Yep.
and then people look at me like, what? And I'm like, it's basically just to picture those three things like melded together, and with some like Native Americanness in there too, I would say, or just Aboriginal or whatever you want to say, something that is very of the earth in a rudimentary way. So the next few shots don't really tell us much.
Get the outline of Darth Vader for a second.
Yeah.
Just like lots of jumps to Rand, then the tower, and then the symbol.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, I think the biggest thing in this moment is I think we're getting a preview of the theme with the music there,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool sounding to me.
Yep, I agree.
It's the kind of thing that I like. I hear that music and I'm like, yeah, I could picture getting hyped to that, on a weekly basis. And then you get Perrin and Egwene talking, Perrin asking if they'll ever go back home, or if she thinks they'll ever go back home. Several more exciting shots of different things happening, and Egwene saying no. Really just kind of hammering home kind of the Fellowship of the Ring vibe that you get from this. Like, this is an adventure away from home. A lot of the themes are, you can't return home, and at least it won't be the same. And it is about just leaving the safe place and venturing out into the scary world. And that is a lot of the major themes in these early books, especially. It's funny how much, like, the books, of course, just shift radically from kind of that kind of fantasy that is kind of a travel log to more of a world spanning political kind of, but not just political.
And it's still a travel log. They're always just going back and forth between places.
Right.
After that initial traveling.
We said at our last show update, yeah, this will probably be the last one unless something happens. And then I saw it,
and then a day or two later.
Yeah. Well, part of the thing was I saw it and I was like, well, we don't need to cover it. And then I kept watching it because I didn't even notice the Aiel sequence the first time I watched it. And that was actually like, oh, okay, I want to talk about this. Like, this little moment right here for me.
No, what I'm thinking of that dropped right after we recorded was the GQ article. I don't want to talk about it in depth, but one thing I did like was how they talk about how they've like basically built a village in the Czech Republic, and like Rosamund Pike's like, we're all gonna live here for a few years if the show takes off, and like just kind of being settled in one place is not something, especially in the Czech Republic, is not something they picture doing, and it's kind of a cool kind of like they set up their own sort of production studio in the Czech Republic in this little kind of village.
And I wonder how much of that was just necessitated by the pandemic too.
Like everything was booked up as far as production went. And so like, all right, we'll just, make our own production company with Blackjack and,
Yeah. I get that reference. Yeah. So, and then of course, there's been lots of little drops on Twitter of Time and different things like that. But, and I'm sure there'll be more. There'll probably be one the day after we put this up.
Oh, of course.
So, because we're coming down to the wire here, but anyway, it's just fun. I'm excited to see the show.
It is, yeah. Get hyped.
Yeah, there's so much content coming out right now. We're in a phase of a lot of things getting released that have been put off because of the pandemic, and so they're all kind of like coming back to back. Like we've got like Eternals this weekend. Cowboy Bebop is coming out the same week as Wheel of Time, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, the live action Cowboy Bebop's
which looks pretty good. I
didn't watch Death Note. I'm not really. I don't know how I feel about these live action adaptations of anime, but maybe it'll be fun.
Most of the time, they feel completely unnecessary to me. But for some reason, I wasn't anticipating this, but I watched the trailer for Cowboy Bebop, and I was like, that looks fun. It kind of works. Like it's like it's its own thing a little bit, but while calling back to the original. But anyway,
in November there's a bunch of Disney stuff coming out, like the Hawkeye show. I think Shang-Chi is going to be on Disney Plus, which I still haven't seen Shang-Chi yet. So like, well, I'll finally catch it on Disney Plus, probably.
Yeah. So I mean, and then of course just recently here, Dune, which have you gotten to see Dune yet?
No, I don't know if I will.
Yeah. Oh man.
Honestly, I didn't like the books. I don't know.
Well, it's just gorgeous though. I liked the books. I like when I tried to read them as a kid, I wasn't ready for them. And I was like, okay, I don't know about this, but I liked the sci-fi miniseries that came out. And I tried to
maybe I'll watch it.
But anyway,
I need to get a month of HBO for a few things anyway. So,
but it
seems like it'd be worth it for that.
It's a first half, so it does feel very odd pacing wise, because there's kind of the climax kind of happens like 2/3 of the way through, and then there's like a 45-minute long denouement basically, and then it just kind of ends like kind of abruptly, and it's like, okay, come see the next part. So
Right.
For people who don't know the source material at all, my fiance was sitting next to me and she was like having trouble staying awake, and later said, "I wasn't a huge fan of that." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I can kind of understand why. Like, if you're if you're not a fan of the source material at all, then it just feels like you're getting a lot of stuff thrown at you, and then it just ends, and it's like, what?" And
does it feel good to be able to say that?
What, fiance?
Yeah.
That's
congrats, man. Yeah, I'm really really happy for you. That's
thanks. Yeah,
it's good stuff.
It's exciting. Thanks for the congrats. And not that our fans care about our personal lives or anything, but yes, I did get engaged a few weeks ago, miraculously.
Indeed,
yeah. So anyway, looking forward to that. That sounds like a good place to end. Sam, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, as usual, check us out on the socials. If you have any thoughts on what we discussed here, we'd love to hear them. And the next mailbag episode, we'll give you a shout out if you say something nice or say something we want to talk about. If you'd like to donate, we have a big donate button on our website, tsmpodcast.com. If you'd like to donate, keep us going. That'd be great. If not, hey, we're happy you're here. Until next time. Tai'Shar Manetheren.